Okay, thank you everyone for being here tonight. We'll bring tonight's city council meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda. Under the consent agenda, I'd like to add item D, accept resignation of Dallas Johnberg and authorize advertisements to fill the position.
Second.
Motion made second. Any discussion? Hearing none to the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that motion passes. No presentations tonight? No. Consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt tonight's consent agenda.
I would like to pull item C, please.
You need a second first. You need a second to motion?
Second.
Second. Well, you made the
Oh, yeah.
motion.
Second.
You're good.
Tom seconds, okay.
Yeah.
All right, discussion.
I would like to pull item C, please.
Okay, I'd like to pull item B. Any further discussion? To the motion, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. I pulled item B only because I wasn't here, so. So if someone can make a motion unless they have.
I'll make a motion for item B on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion made item B, which is the meeting minutes for February 24th. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor to the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, and I abstain. Tim, item C.
Actually, I
Oh, I'm
pulled
sorry,
that.
Randy.
So, Jack, this is in reference to the seasonal pay rate increase for public workers, and you're defining that we have had issues with people applying for this position and also having a concern that we are in a competitive market with other cities for this position, and that makes sense to me. My only question on this one is that I know that in at least the previous year, we had some return workers for these positions. Is that true?
That's correct.
I'm assuming that means that we have contacted them and found out that they were not interested in this position?
We have contacted them. They are showing some interest. One of the young men has indicated that he would like to return if he doesn't get a job at his school. He's a college student and he would like to stay on campus and work there this summer. But if that doesn't pan out, he would like to come back. The other young man that works for us works for the school system, and he's waiting for some information on what his employment status is going to be after beginning in the summer. He'll know that probably in the next 30 days.
Okay. That was it. That's all I had on that particular topic.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Just seeing what the going rate is for just entry-level jobs around here, 14's more in line. So, but to be clear though, it's just gonna be a straight 14. There's no additional for
Correct.
returning. Okay,
Correct.
okay. All right, any other discussion? Okay.
With that, I'll make a motion to pass item C.
Second.
Motion made second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. New business.
Item 6A1, interim use permit for the keeping of chickens. Trung and Connie Ha are requesting an IUP for the keeping of chickens at 20350 Jewel Street. There is a coop on the property, and this property meets the acreage requirements established by city ordinance. The property contains 2.46 acres and is zoned rural residential. There was recently a code enforcement complaint with the applicant at this address. The applicant was keeping chickens at a number below that required for an IUP, but had a rooster on the property. Upon being notified of the compliance violation, the applicant promptly resolved the rooster issue. The code enforcement complaint was not in regards to the number of chickens, but solely on the rooster. Chapter 10, Animals, Section 1015 1J, Exceptions, Subpart 2, permits a maximum of 10 animals to be kept on a parcel with a minimum of 1 acre pasture land without an IUP, as long as the other conditions of the code are met. City code also states that the keeping of 20 or more animals requires an IUP, and all properties under 3 acres need an IUP for the keeping of chickens. The applicant now desires to keep 20 chickens on the property and is requesting an IUP to allow this number. The applicant meets all the conditions of the city ordinance, Chapter 10, Article 5, farm animals. On February 26, 2020, the Planning Commission held a public hearing for the IUP. At the public hearing, 2 residents spoke to the application, and neither were opposed to the request. One resident was concerned about roosters and that the chickens be confined to the yard, as the previous owner of the property had roosters and the chickens were uncontained. The commission recommended approval of the IUP by a 5-0 vote. City Council is requested to approve an IUP for the keeping of up to 20 chickens for Trung and Connie Ha at 20350 Jewel Street Northeast, PIN number 2433-23-21-0014, with the conditions as listed in your packet. Council is requested to approve Resolution 2020-11, approval of an IUP for the keeping of chickens at 20350 Jewel Street.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2020-11, approval and IUP of the keeping of chickens at 20350 Jewel Street Northeast.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
I have a question. Why can't they have roosters?
Roosters are prohibited in the city ordinance, mainly because they make,
Noise.
they make a lot of racket.
I know.
That's ridiculous.
We had chickens behind us once and they had a rooster and we loved it. But not everyone, it's like gunfire and motorcycles, everything else, like not everyone likes the sound, so.
Well,
And they can be loud.
especially at first light.
Well-
That's when they do it.
And this one was nuts. It would do it in the middle of the night, so it kind of messed us up, like we had to wake up. so.
Yeah.
I grew up with roosters.
But that's the reason why, the rooster.
You get used to them.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, to the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. A2.
Item 6A2, text amendments to city code. At the February 24th, 2020 City Council meeting, staff reviewed proposed text amendments to the city zoning ordinance. Council discussed these proposals and approved changes to Section 1015 driveway access standards and Section 14 detached accessory structures. Council tabled consideration of Section 22-3C prohibiting parking and Section 25 fence regulation pending further clarification of the amendments. The proposed amendments to these sections, as discussed at the February 24th meeting, are returned with modifications to the council as shown in your packet. Under Section 22-3C, prohibited parking, code enforcement relating to parking of buses, motor trucks, semi-tractors, and/or semi-trailers on city streets in the rural residential zoning districts of the city have been ineffective due to the current wording of the ordinance. To eliminate the interpretive concerns of 22-3C, attend to the use and needs of agricultural properties and address issues with parking, Section 22-3C, Subpart B5 is proposed to read as follows. Rural residential district, parking of buses, motor trucks, semi-tractors, and/or semi-trailers on individual properties is prohibited with the following exceptions. Active loading or unloading operations being utilized to render a service or delivery on parcels of land larger than 3 acres not located within a platted subdivision, on properties with agricultural tax classification. Section B of that is parking of buses, motor trucks, semi-tractors, and/or semi-trailers on city streets is prohibited. Council is requested to approve the text amendment as exhibited in Attachment 3 and incorporate this change in Ordinance 2020-03.
I will make a motion to approve the changes as presented with the addition of subsection I active loading or unloading operations being utilized to render a service or delivery under subsection B of parking of buses, motor trucks, semi-tractors, and/or semi-trailers on city streets is prohibited.
Second.
So there's motion made and second. Discussion, I'm sorry. As we look at our packet, is it not the red line that's new? I'm missing what's new.
Actually, the new statement is statement B. In the previous discussion, it was parking on city streets is prohibited. So the addition of buses, motor trucks, semi-tractors, and/or semi-trailers was added to clarify that.
But everything that's in red line,
Is under consideration for amendment.
right, because that was not part of the original,
No, this was part of the discussion, but it's never been approved yet.
correct.
Yes.
So Steve was not here at the
Yeah.
last meeting where,
Oh, no, I understand where you're at. My question is,
okay,
in your motion,
yes,
you only read item AI.
that's the only one that I am recommending to be added under subsection B. Because the way
Item
it's-
I is under A, though.
Right, and what I'm saying is to add item I under subsection B as well. So in addition. So right now it says parking of buses, motor trucks, semi-tractors, and/or semi-trailers on city streets is prohibited. And so what I'm saying is, well, I guess I didn't add with the prohibited with the following exceptions. Which is that active loading or unloading operations being utilized to render a service or delivery.
So the intent of your motion is basically repeat that first underline is prohibited with the following exceptions and the item I in its entirety, and include that with item B.
Yeah, but I think we're gonna have to add is prohibited with the following exceptions.
Oh, yeah, okay, you're right.
Because if we don't, then it
Well, that's
doesn't
what I
really make
meant.
sense.
Yeah, so we're just adding with the following exceptions, and then add I under
Correct.
B as well, okay.
So I will have to amend my previous motion to include on city streets is prohibited with the following exceptions, and then adding item I, which is active loading or unloading operations being utilized to render a service or delivery.
Okay, it's a motion to amend to clarify. Is there a second?
I seconded the first one. I agree with you.
Well, this is totally new, so you don't have
Okay.
to be
Second.
anyone. Okay, this motion made and seconded, okay. Discussion on a motion to amend? Hearing none to the motion to amend, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes back to the original motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none to the original motion as amended, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That motion passes.
Section 25, fence regulations. Changes to the city ordinance regulating fences have been precipitated by higher density development with smaller size lots have created the need for zoning review of perimeter fencing to avoid unintentional easement encroachments. The potential for instructions of sight lines at intersection increases on small lots. Concerns for pool safety are already written in the code, and there are requirements in the Minnesota Building Code for pool fences that reference has been added as part of the text amendment, and staff has changed the requirement to read boundary fences within R1 and R2 districts require a fence permit. This also requires adding the definition of boundary fence to section 1.9 definition, which is proposed to read boundary fence. A boundary fence is any fence within 5 feet of the property line running parallel to the property line. The council's direction, fencing requirements, fencing requiring a permit is further clarified, and those types of fencing not specifically described in the ordinance or city engineering manual remain exempt from permitting requirements. There is no proposed charge for the additional fence permit with this proposal. Fees for fencing permits only apply to those over 6 feet in height. Council is requested to approve the text amendment as exhibited in attachment 5 and incorporate these changes into ordinance 2020-03.
Is there a motion? Does anyone have a motion on this? Well, then I will make a motion to approve the proposed text changes to section 25 fence regulations as presented by staff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion made, second, discussion.
I just want to say on these changes, we're increasing hardships on our residents, making them having to come up here for permits when there is really, the problem that the city identified is, it just doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal where everybody has to come up here and get a permit for a fence. I can see it if you lived in Blaine or Fridley or Minneapolis, but I think it's unnecessary.
You know,
Okay.
in a technical sense, this includes those little plastic or wire things you put around a little flower garden sort of thing. No?
No,
Well, that was one of our first concerns, I think, was that.
Yeah.
all it is a perimeter fence. And a perimeter fence is defined as any fence within 5 feet of a property line running parallel with that property line. So interior garden fences and visible dog fences don't apply to this.
Yeah, I mean, these issues come mostly from trees coming up, not fences, but, you know, particularly fences that are put up in the drainage easements, you know, that they're not supposed to. And that's part of the permitting, is we're at least aware of it and can work with them, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And again, this is just restricted to the R1 and R2 districts, not the rural residential district. Generally, there's ample room there, and those problems aren't as prevalent in that zoning district as they are in those that have higher densities.
But nonetheless, we still have those issues in the RR district as well. So, but we're just not applying this to the RR district?
That's the recommendation of staff at this time.
Okay. Any further discussion? To the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That motion passes.
I did send an attachment out that's requesting an amendment under this item, under section 14. Detached accessory structures, you also have a handout at your desk. There's a highlighted item in yellow for further classification and discussion we had at the last meeting on the 200 square foot requirement. This permit regulation section number 1 is proposed to be amended to read, all accessory buildings and/or structures over 200 square feet in size require a building permit prior to construction unless specifically exempt under this ordinance. Accessory structures 200 square feet or less, and the or less has been added, shall not require a building permit unless otherwise required by any other ordinance or state requirement. It's accessory structures 200 square feet or less, and the or less has been added, shall comply with all provisions of this section in zoning district regulations. That was added to eliminate the confusion over the 200. We discussed last time that the requirements would be up to 200 square feet and over 200 square feet, which virtually eliminate the 200 number. So we just want to add that for clarification and approval of that amendment to be added to 2020-03.
Move for approval of section 14, subsection 1, permit regulations to comply with what the city administrator just read, and the language, the verbiage in the document.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made in second, discussion. Hearing none. To the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes.
At this time, with the approval of that, staff requests City Council to consider approval of ordinance 2020-003, which includes the text amendments we just discussed and the one approved for the driveway structures at the last meeting.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to pass Amendment 2020-03 for the changes to our ordinance.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Did we not just change the text based on?
That would need to include the amendment we made to that
Right.
first
So
ordinance.
your motion was to approve this as presented. So we would need amendment to that motion to include the changes on the parking.
I'm confused.
Okay. I would like to amend my motion on 2020-03 to include the changes that were made at tonight's meeting, specifically for the parking.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made second. Discussion on the motion to amend. Hearing none. All in favor on the motion to amend, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion, the motion to amend passes. Back to original motion. Any further discussion? On the motion as amended, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion as amended passes. On the department reports.
That was too confusing.
Item 7G1, property acquisition for PIN number 32-33-23-12-0005 and 32-33-23-12-0006. The City of East Bethel began planning the 187th Lane Viking Boulevard Service Road project in 2015 and received a MnDOT pledge for highway safety improvement and set aside funds for this project in 2016. These funds were later diverted to other state projects by MnDOT. Even with the loss of that funding, the city continued their commitment to this project and included it as a priority in the city's street capital and/or MSA plans in each year beyond 2016. In November 2019, MnDOT designated $3.2 million for the 187th Lane Viking Boulevard Service Road project, with the expectations that the majority of the funds would be spent or committed in the calendar year 2020. Upon receiving this assurance from MnDOT, the city immediately commenced property negotiations with Ferrellgas, as acquisition of their site is critical for the construction of the intersection at 187th Lane and Highway 65. The city has received a commitment of dedication of easements from 2 of the 3 property owners over which the proposed 187th Lane Viking Boulevard Service Road is to be aligned. As the property of the 3rd owner, Ferrellgas, is necessary for the 187th Lane and Highway 65 intersection, purchase of that entire 1.4 acre site is necessary. Due to Ferrellgas's non-response to continuous negotiations to acquire the property, their delay in responding to emails and phone calls regarding this matter throughout the process, and their refusal to permit city access to 18721 Highway 65 for the completion of a Phase 1 environmental report, it is staff's opinion that Ferrellgas has shown no serious intent to move forward to achieve a negotiated sale, that the city has made a good faith effort to purchase the property through a mutually agreeable transaction. Discussions for the sale of this property have reached an impasse. The 187th Lane Viking Boulevard Service Road serves the public purpose. The acquisition of this property continues to be and is essential for the south intersection construction, for the 187th Lane Viking Boulevard Service Road, and the use of eminent domain is at this time the only means to acquire the parcel within the time constraints placed upon the city to complete this project and be eligible for the MnDOT funds. At this time, I'll ask the city attorney to briefly outline the process of the taking, and then we'll move on to recommendations.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. The process that the city will be going forward with now is the quick take process that's pursuant to Minnesota Statute 117.042. The appraisal component and the negotiation requirement have already been completed. So upon adoption of the resolution tonight, the property owner will be notified of the city's intent to take possession within 90 days. At that time, the owner will be notified by certified mail. A deposit of the appraised amount will be made to the court or paid to the owner. And then within 90 days of that time, the city will take possession of the property. The owner at that point has a right to appeal the amount, but the possession of the property won't be at issue. So any appeal will relate only to the amount. If the owner determines that they want to go forward with an appeal of the amount provided by the appraisal.
All right.
Thank you, Chris. At this time, staff recommends council consider approval of Resolution 2020-12, approving and authorizing the condemnation of property for street and utility improvements. And our city attorney also has an amendment to add to this resolution.
I'd like to propose for the council's consideration an amendment to item 4 of the resolution after subject property pursuant to. I'd propose it would read pursuant to the quick take provisions of Minnesota statutes section 117.042.
Can you restate that number again?
117.042.
04?
042.
42, okay.
So is that the only change, is the .042?
No, the only change is pursuant to the quick take provisions of Minnesota statute section 117.042.
So you want the quick take in there as well?
Yes, Councilmember.
Move for adoption of resolution number 2020-12, including the amendment identified by the city attorney, adding to chapter 117.042, as described in the quick take process.
Second.
Motion made, second, discussion.
Jack, have all means of contacting them been exhausted? Certified letters, everything?
No, there have been no certified letters, but we did inform them after our last discussion with them that we made a counter offer to their latest offer, which took 6 weeks to get, and asked them to respond to us within a given date, and told them at that time we would have to take additional action. They have not responded, so.
Okay.
So can they take us to a court and appeal this condemnation? And when we take it, do we just go in there and start tearing stuff down? How does that work?
Mayor and council members, the appeal, if there's any appeal made, would be related only to the amount. The condemnation would go forward. They can dispute the amount, but not the condemnation with this process.
Well, that just doesn't seem fair.
So, Suzanne, is your question more of if they haven't vacated by the 90 days, what happens physically?
Kind of, yeah. What happens if they're still there, and so they can't appeal us taking their property, the quick take, at all?
The title will transfer to the city within the 90 days. The issue, theoretically, they could say that the city doesn't have power of eminent domain, but it's laid out in the resolution. The city would have power of eminent domain in this for this purpose because it's to put in a public roadway. The amount is something that they could challenge.
I'm just not getting that the government can just go take property like that. It just doesn't seem right. I don't feel like this is the right way to do things. I feel like maybe because their headquarters is so far away, they haven't been able to get in touch with people, especially with what's going on in the whole world with all the stuff that's going on. I can't even list it all.
Well, Jack, we've had discussions and we've gone back and forth over the numbers. We just haven't come to a resolution, correct?
That's correct.
They're willing to sell it at one price, a
We
price that we weren't,
But what will
wasn't
the
acceptable to
courts
us.
cost?
So what'll happen is if they appeal it, then it goes to combination court, correct?
Correct. There will be a commission
Then
appointed.
a panel of 3 commissioners will decide what the true purchase price will be. It'll be somewhere within that range, correct?
Correct.
And we've been discussing this with them since November the 9th, and essentially they've been semi-responsive at best. They originally stated a price that they would take for the property, and we went back and had the appraisal. They were furnished with certain parts of the appraisal that verified what our price was, and it normally took like 6 to 8 weeks to get anything back from them. So they did come back with another price. They lowered theirs by about $9,000, which was still about $90,000 more than what the appraisal was. And at that time, we submitted them another counteroffer, and they had 10 days to respond. Now that's stretched into 17, and we've heard no response from them. So I don't think that they're really serious in trying to negotiate a mutually agreeable sale on this.
No,
But they did indicate that they would sell it, so they are interested in selling the property.
I understand that. I still feel like this isn't the right way to do things. However, that said, what are the city's court costs estimated to be going to all these courts? And if they go to that court, can they appeal that court? Those are my questions.
I don't know what the city's court costs would be. Obviously, it's a sizable amount of money that the two parties are apart at this point. I can tell you definitely what potential costs the city would be required to incur on their behalf. Statute allows up to $5,000 for certain types of property, commercial property included, if they wanted to get an appraisal or something like that, that the city would have to pay for. So I can tell you what that amount would be. I can't tell you the amount it would be. I can't imagine it's the difference in the property values, how far the parties are apart. But I can tell you that there's the potential that the city will have to pay $5,000 to the property owner so they can secure their own appraisal.
The other cost would be the cost of the commissioners that are appointed to review this. The only thing that I can give you is what our previous costs were. They could be close, they could be totally way off, but we spent about $15,000 in legal fees on that matter. But again, these are not always apples to apples comparison. The biggest issue we have is we're under a time constraint to get this project started, because the obligation of those MnDOT funds is they expect us to spend the majority or commit the majority of that funding by the end of this year. So if we don't do that, there's a possibility that we could lose some of that funding.
Jack, correct me if I'm mistaken. For our consideration, he's indicated the MnDOT interactions with us to accomplish something, and the accomplishment is necessary city infrastructure that is essential for going forward with city progress. And what seems like one of the real sticking points is they won't even answer the emails, phone calls, et cetera.
Well, they'll answer emails occasionally. Phone calls, I don't think, I've probably placed a couple dozen calls to them, they've probably returned two. Emails are I've got a list of about 6 emails they've returned, and I've sent them much more than that. You know, again, we realize that we're dealing with a large corporation, there's probably a chain that has to go through, but I would think that we would have had more response from this, especially regarding the fact that they indicated that they would be willing to sell from the beginning on this.
Regardless, something of this nature and the methods that we're considering, they should respond to emails, even if they don't give a satisfactory answer. I've received your email and taking under advisement, some such thing. And they're not doing any of that apparently, or minimal.
Chris, in your experience, is it possible that this is a route that they want the transaction to take because they don't want to move off their price?
It's certainly possible. It's unusual. They certainly know the city would have the authority to do this, particularly since, you know, it's for a public roadway. So it's certainly possible. I'm not exactly sure why that would be the case. The city's already offered a price above its appraisal value, so
Right.
the submission would be in accordance with the appraisal value.
Okay.
Just general information, their headquarters is in St. Louis, did you say?
Correct.
So it's not a drive across town just to have a meeting with somebody as well.
Well, this day and age, you don't need to be in the same room to do stuff
No,
like
no,
this.
you don't, but
You
they're-
hardly ever are, so.
It's not as though that's an option. They're not,
I think if they were in town here, I don't think anything would change in terms of
right,
the way they've responded, so.
no reason to think it would.
But if you'll also look, there's a handout too, the attachments A and B are there too, as far as the legal description of those parcels, plus also the map that shows what the city owns, with the exception of what the city of East Bethel controls on this property. You can see it here in this drawing where it says city easement. Of the 1.44 acres there, the city owns well over a half an acre of this site. In their request to us, or their substantiation of their value, was that they owned the whole site, which they do not. The city acquired this in the early 2000s. All this has been recorded, and it definitely reflects on the value of the property and the fact that it renders it almost unbuildable going forward.
I don't care to do this sort of thing either, but I think we're backed into a corner.
So my other question didn't get answered, and that is there an appeal to the condemnation appeal? Can they appeal after that if they don't get a result?
The taking, you're asking?
No, for the money.
The commissioners, what happens in the commissioners report?
Is there-
Correct. There can be a dispute over the price. There won't be a dispute
Right,
over
I
the land.
understand that.
Yep.
So, but how many times can they appeal it to get what they want? Because I think this company has lots of good lawyers, and I think they'll take it till they get to the
The
price
pri-
that they want.
The price is up in the air, but as far as taking the land for possession that's not debatable, correct?
Correct.
So if you disagree with the price once or 100 times or something, the end to it is that city takes possession of the land to,
Right, I think what she's getting at is.
How long can it drag
Correct
out?
me if I'm wrong, but Suzanne's point is that it goes through this Board of Appeals, okay? And they make a decision. So once that decision is made, they decide on the price somewhere between what we have or what they have, or maybe just what our price is. But at that point, can they appeal that? Correct?
Correct. And how many times can they keep appealing till they get the 299?
Well, once it becomes Mayor and council members, once it becomes a court case and would proceed in district court, the appeal process would be like any other case. So in this case, theoretically, the maximum number of appeals you'd have would be 2 to 3, depending if you wanted to take it to the United States Supreme Court. At some point, there's a burden requirement that they show that the appraisal that the city has obtained is incorrect or in some way flawed. So they would have a burden of production at a certain point to say why this appraisal is incorrect. So that's something they would have to do in any case. But once it becomes a district court case, they would be entitled to an appellate process.
So there's a possibility they could drag this out past the 90 days?
The purchase price,
Yeah, the purchase price.
but not the
But I
take.
mean, because, I mean, you know, you said we're on a,
Well, again, we.
Fast track to
we
get-
get again, we have the property, it's just a matter
Right.
of how much. do
how
we
much,
own.
okay. But you know what I mean, if we want to start putting utilities in this June,
We
July, August.
will own it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll own the
yeah.
property,
We'll
but
own the property, yeah.
it just that price, so we don't have
It's
to
just
worry
that
about,
price.
we don't have to worry
And
about, okay.
that'll take more than 90 days, the commissioner's hearing and everything.
And for the full process to play out, but it's the 90-day trigger for the city taking possession of the property.
One of the worst things I see happening is clearing out that mess. One of those is, what, 20-some thousand or so gallon LP tank?
Well, that will be their responsibility.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that has significant value, so I would imagine
Sure.
they'll take
Yeah.
their stuff, so.
Again, back to your question, Suzanne. I think if there's an appeal, maybe the award is for the appraisal, they might appeal it once, but they're not gonna continue to appeal this till they get the $299 and spend
Yeah.
within their own budgets, thousands and thousands of dollars in attorney's fees just to break even.
Well, and you have to have a basis for appeal, just
Yeah.
because you don't like the decision's not a basis for appeal.
He's talking about a burden of proof to show that the
understand
estimate's
that.
flawed.
Is there any further discussion? Okay. I just want to make sure to keep track. There was a motion on the resolution, correct?
Yes.
As amended.
Okay, and second, all right. Just want to clarify. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. To the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Item 7G2, date change for the local board of appeals and equalization meeting. Resolution 29-65 setting 2020 local board of appeals and equalization meeting date was approved by City Council on December 23rd, 2019. This resolution set the date for the local board of appeals and equalization for April 27th, 2020, and the alternate date for May 4th, 2020. On February 25th, 2020, Anoka County Property Records Division informed the city that there will be delays in the mailing of their individual property valuation notices this year as a result of the late launch of their new countywide property records and taxation system. Due to a projected late mailing of these notices, the original range of dates approved for the local board of appeals and equalization meetings must be adjusted to correspond to the shortened time frame available for the meeting. The dates for the 2020 local board of appeals and equalization meeting now needs to be between May 4th and May the 12th. If no dates between May 4th and May 12th are selected, city residents will have to utilize the open book dates on May 5th or May 6th held at the Anoka County Government Center for appeals of their property valuation. To meet the county's revised timeline, the 2020 local board of appeals and equalization meeting is proposed to be scheduled on May 4th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. The alternate date is recommended to be scheduled on May 11th, 2020 at a time to be determined. In order to allow sufficient time to conclude the May 4th, 2020 meeting in one session, council may desire to change the time or postpone the public forum session for the May 4th city council meeting. To ensure the date changes are listed on the valuation notices, The city needs to respond to Anoka County by no later than Monday, March the 9th. Staff is requesting council consideration of approval of Resolution 2020-13, resetting the 2020 Local Board of Appeals and Equalization meeting date to May 4th, 2020, and eliminating the public forum section from May 4th, 2020 City Council meeting agenda.
Can we, before we move on this, can we get a clarification? May 4th is a work meeting night, not a council night? It's our first Monday.
Okay, all right, so we don't have to do the public forum
Well,
situation.
there is no public forum.
No, that's correct, we don't have to worry about that, so.
So, is there a reason to do this at 5:30?
We'd
What-
already set it for 5:30 to allow time to finish it. When we set the meeting date back in December, it was set for 5:30. We can change it to a later date if we want to, a later time.
Can we change the time?
Yes,
Okay, my only point is, 2 points. One is these usually go pretty short, so we'll be here for an hour and a half before the work meeting starts. And then secondly, I think it's a lot easier for folks to get to a 7 o'clock meeting than it is to get to a 5:30 meeting. Okay, so we can make that part of the discussion. I just want to clarify that it
Yeah.
wasn't a council meeting, so there's no conflict with the council. Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so then we need a motion.
Including the times?
Yes. There is a resolution in our packet. I would suggest that you make, if there's going to be a change to the time on that date, you make it as part of your motion.
Move for adoption of Resolution 2020-13, amending the rescheduling a meeting for Monday, May 4th, alternate date May 11th, with a starting time of 7 p.m. to allow for participation of city residents.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Discussion.
Jack, I'm concerned. I mean, according to this, it says that to ensure the date changes are listed on the evaluation notices, the city needs to respond to Anoka County no later than Monday, March 9th, which is today.
Mhm.
So is this resolution going to fulfill that? I mean, since they're not really open this evening?
I've talked to them, they say as long as I send them an email after the meeting tonight confirming their approval, that's good with them.
Okay, very good.
The only question I'll ask is, we can't do it at 7 o'clock on May 11th. Why would we, do we need an alternate date at this point?
We have to have an alternate date in case this runs over. If we do it at 7 and just make that our entire work meeting, we can do it till it's concluded. But still, we need to set an alternate date just as a backup.
Okay, my only point is, the way the motion's made, the May 11th alternate date is also at 7 p.m.
The May 11th date is the time to be determined.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected. Any further discussion? Hearing none, to the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes.
Can I just take a moment here and ask whether or not we need to make a motion to reinstate the public forum for the April, was it 27th date, which we took off?
We can do it that way, since it was just a motion, it wasn't a resolution that we approved. We can just make that announcement at the next council meeting that,
Well, we haven't set an agenda for April. We don't set agenda at council, right? We can, I mean, if it needs to be
Well,
cleared.
the point that I'm trying to make is that there was a motion made and passed to remove the public forum for that date, the original date of, I'm looking for the date, April 27th.
So really, we need to rescind 2019-65. Do we not?
2019 set the date. What we're doing is resetting the date. This motion says resetting. We could rescind it, but we could also just do it with the resetting the date of this. 2019-65 shows that we actually set a date for it, that's
Oh,
what I
it is
think.
resetting, okay. All right. If you want to make a motion, we can just do part, we don't need a resolution for it.
Well, very good. I will make a motion to reinstate the public forum on April 27th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made in second, discussion?
2027 to reinstate the public forum. Not sure I understand that.
In the original motion, or
Right,
original
it-
resolution, it had it deleting the public forum from that meeting to account for the local board of appeals and equalization. So the resolution we passed tonight just reset the date and time, whereas the original resolution also had deleting the public forum from April 27th.
Correct.
And so the motion on the board, on the table, is to reinstate the public forum for that night. Just to clarify, we're going to public forum.
Okay,
Okay? Is that, you clear?
yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Any further discussion? To the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that motion passes. On the staff reports,
The only thing I have to add is that road restrictions went into effect last Friday morning at 12:01 a.m. So all city roads are posted at 5 tons. There are certain city streets where if you can travel over 7 to 9 ton streets for emergency uses, contact City Hall and we'll work out a route for you.
okay? Anything else?
That's it.
Council reports. Tom?
Road Commission meets tomorrow. There was a communication, I believe today or yesterday, as far as burning permits. Burning permits for this county and several others have been reinstated due to the lack of snow cover.
Okay, Tim?
I just have a comment. I want to thank our East Bethel Fire Department. We had 2 home fires this weekend. They responded to both calls very quickly. They minimized the home damage. No residents were hurt. No firefighters were hurt. So I just want to say thanks to those guys. That's all I got.
Yep, very good. Suzanne?
I have a question on the burn permits. Where, do they get them here or do they get them at the fire station?
Get them here.
Here, okay. And that's been made public besides right here, an email, the email we got?
We just got that today, so it'll be on the website.
Okay, perfect.
On the reader
I imagine,
board.
want to be in a reader board
Yeah,
too?
yeah.
Okay.
I have a question, another question. There were some postings online about paving gravel roads in the city, and somebody said something about Klondike, and later I mentioned something, and then later I got a call asking if Klondike was scheduled, and I'm like, I don't think it is. I know it's not for 2020. I don't know if it's in for any of our long-term plans. So because I didn't know, I'm asking here, is it ever scheduled, or the paving of it, or is it going to just continue what it is?
It hasn't been scheduled in any of our capital improvement plans, which go out 5 years, and
5 years.
the problem with paving Klondike is that there's so few residents on there, and the paving length is about 1.5 miles left. It would be probably a $2 to $3 million project to do that paving, because there's a lot of peat soils that would have to be over excavated down to the sand, and it would be a very expensive project. And the current traffic count on Klondike from Palisade going east to East Bethel Boulevard is about 300 vehicles a day. The traffic count going west of Palisade back to Highway 65 is about 600 vehicles a day. So there just aren't warrants for justifying the payment at that expense.
Okay, and then the other question that I have, the RCI that they're putting in, is there going to be a light there, or is it just going to be like down by the theater, 187th, where
No, it's unsignalized.
no signal?
No signal.
All right, that's good. And then my last statement is, the Park Commission for tomorrow night meeting has been canceled. Do you know why, Jack?
There weren't enough items to put on the agenda at this time, so it'll be scheduled, all those items will be rescheduled for April.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
Okay, Randy?
I just want to let everybody know that on the 21st of March, we will be having our Game On game night. So if you are available between noon and 6 p.m., please stop in and socialize with your neighbors. Thanks.
And I'm just going to remind everyone that Canby Hills of East Bethel, the new youth mental health treatment facility that's actually open now. They're in their second week of training. There will be an open house on March 25th and from 4:30 to 6:30, and this is open to the public. And they would very much like as many neighbors and community members to come in and attend and see the inside of this building and see what they're all about. So, and again, it's March 25th from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. And that's all I have tonight.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second?
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.